Madagascar, a tropical island in the Indian Ocean, not far from the southeastern coast of Africa. An island known for its rich and unique biodiversity, also for its cultural mixture between Africa and Asia. One of the poorest nations on earth, one of the countries with the highest illiteracy in the sub-Saharan region, dragged by its past political unrest and economical turmoil, Madagascar was the birthplace of the extreme metal scene of Africa. For a long time their stories were hidden and untold. However, after more than 3 decades, several local band members survivors decided to break their silence and start telling the untold story of the underground extreme metal scene that happened during the past glory era. Antananarivo, or the City of the Thousands, the capital city of Madagascar, located in the central highland, established around 1610 to 1625, a city where most of the administrative and headquarters located. This is the place in where our story begins. As the world shifted to a new era, the music industry shifted into a different level and directions as well. The 80s was a big cornerstone for many genre and style that existed today. It was a golden age for many musical style and the beginning of a new ones, among them rock music and metal genre. There are few studies, if not none, on how this music style influenced a group of young artists in this tropical island as early as the 80s, a nation under a severe socialist regime, an isolated place in the middle of the Indian Ocean, in where Christianity plays a big role in their society, and this was happening during the Cold War era. For more than 3 decades, questions remain without answers. The puzzle is missing some pieces. What did inspire this young artist and why did they choose to play extreme metal? If the majority of the Malagasy people make barely $2 per day, how could they afford to play and make their music? Heavy metal music required a good musical instruments and they're expensive. Who came to watch their show? The list goes on. Thanks to modern technologies and social medias of nowadays, I was able to reconnect with these band members or former band members survivors. Thank you for being interviewed and being part of this story. Without you, our beautiful story could be lost forever. In the late 70s, 1978 to be precise, their story started while they were still students in Antananarivo. By the year of 1980s, most of the Malagasy publics were already familiar with the sounds of rock and roll, blues, disco, country music, pop rock, even some psychedelic rock from other countries. But this time, a local band brought an unusual sound and unfamiliar rhythm. They were playing faster and louder. They were very mobile, even aggressive on stage. Kadradraka or the 2000 cockroaches were born. They were not quite an extreme metal band, but they were considered as the most extreme at that time. The quartet covered some of Iron Maiden's songs, but they had few of their own in the beginning. They introduced a new genre and style. They inspired many bands. They were the cornerstone and the pioneer of the heavy metal scene in the Red Island. Because of their common passion of music, they exchanged music albums from Deep Purple to Frank Zappa and others. Dominic used to come at the brothers Ralam's home as they were musicians, or just to listen to music, because the brothers had plenty of music collections. At that time, it was so difficult and rare to find a kind of music to listen. By the year of 1983, after they finished their high school, they decided to form their band. The name just came from a joke, but still stick until today. Many people were surprised by their music style, but the band didn't even know what they were really playing at that time. They were playing and performed at several venues and shows around the capital city, either by themselves or with other bands. They really enjoy that era. As the band members started colleges and universities, the band had to be dismembered and split. Unfortunately, they did not get the chance to record any of their music. Access to a recording studio was nearly impossible for such a band at that time. The only things they were able to keep were few photographs, old newspapers, and word from mouth by the people who witnesses their acts. By the mid-80s, as Kadradraka dissolved, meanwhile, the handful of metal bands sprout grew around the capital city of Madagascar. This time, they were more dedicated, even more aggressive, more faster and louder. They picked more complex metal band names. They were dressed and acted like Westerners' heavy metal bands. Long hair became a standard. Access to recording and rehearsal studios were not easy still, but they started to get access to some metal music from Europe or the Americas. Some lucky metal lovers were able to import some cassettes through families or friends. At the end of the day, copies were shared and spread among the small community. By the year of 1986, Kazar, Martu Gass, Lokomotiva were among the few names who marked this first wave of heavy and extreme metal of Madagascar. They brought this genre into another level.
Tamin'ny taona 86.
Kazar, formed by 4 band members in 1986, but they became a trio after one of their guitar players left the band. This band is very possibly the first extreme metal band in the entire continent of Africa. They introduced this metal subgenre as early as 1986. They picked their name from a distant extremely luminous objects that exist in the universe's astronomical system. More likely, they converted Kazar to match the local language. Despite all the country issues, they just fell in love with metal music. Their inspiration sources came from foreign albums, cassettes that friends or family brought from abroad. They made copies and shared among friends and to the metal community. The band didn't have a specific theme or messages. Dominic's lyrics had more messages, tales, and wisdoms. The rest of the band focused more on the aggressively and musical techniques. Their music went on air radios several times at the only radio station in the entire country at that time, especially when it comes to direct air radio shows. They perform in several shows and venues in several places in the island as well. Kazar was the first Malagasy metal band who performed internationally, included their show in the Comoros Island in 1988 and later in Paris in 2000. They were among the Malagasy rock bands who opened the show during the passage of the French rock band Lil Bob Story. Several lineups and members played alongside with the band since its beginning, but Lala, the drummer, is the one who sticks and loyal since its formation. Fall in the category of thrash metal. Like most of the Malagasy rock and metal bands in that era, Kazar has its own spice and flavor with the way they compose and arrange their music. You can tell right away it is a band from another region of the globe. Milan, the guitar player, was growing up learning classical music, so he always brings the classical music flavor in most of their songs. They mostly influenced by bands like Iron Maiden, Creator, Testament, early Metallica, or any kind of old school thrasher of that era. Kazar did not issue any album until the year of 2000, but they did issue a demo recording in the capital at that time. Until nowadays, Kazar remains the icon of extreme metal of Madagascar.
Metal, musika extreme metal tamin'ny taona sivifolo zay a. Izy misy a tarika fifandraisana tarika tamin'izany fotoana zany a zay mafy ny fifandraisana, mafy ny fiarahamientana. Ohatra mety ohatra fotsiny zao ohatra hoe ny groupe Pharaons. Ya, groupe Pharaons reo tena rahalahy reo. Rahalahy reo arisany tena niaraka nanao concert, niaina taminay mihitsy ihany koa e. They are brothers, they are brothers.
In the 80s and 90s, the friendships and brotherhoods between metal bands were very strong and important. As many forms of rock and metal styles were evolved in the capital city of Madagascar, another band formed by 5 band members appeared. Lokomotiva was born in the year of 1986. They picked their name in relation to the weight, forces, heats, and energy that a steam engine locomotive produced. As a locomotive are made with metals and steels, the combination gives the band a true heavy metal name. This band is one of the kind who likes musical complexities and melodics. Their music can start as mellow melodic ballad, but it becomes fast, heavy at a certain point. Mao's vocal can be as normal singer and can change into a screaming ghost. Their 2 guitars give their composition more flexibilities and gap fillers. Meanwhile, they can make harmonic, dual, parallel solos. The band started playing in small venues like school graduations or small festivities, but quick they went onto a bigger stage. They had several underground shows with other bands, but they had been on a bigger festival stage as well. They had several shows in 2 major cities beside the capital. One was at the major port city of Tuamasna, and the other was in the city south of the capital, Ansirabe. These 2 cities are connected by railroads from the capital city, so it makes sense for them to join these 2 cities. They choose to play heavy metal because they believe this style and genre has more connection to the people's life in general. They don't promote revolt or riot nor uprising. Their message are to incite people to do better and stand to injustices and oppressions because they believe music is education. In 1998, the local union newspapers awarded them as the best rock and heavy metal band in the island. By the year of 2013, the band had issued their first album.
kida ary akastrako ny musicien atao groupe ary akastrako ny musique rock en général.
Martu Gass, formed by 4 brothers members, they started playing folk music, rock and roll, or soft rock. In the search to find their identity, the band changed names several times, depends on what style they played. But when they were getting into heavy metal, they picked loudness as a name without realizing that it was already an existing Japanese band. At last, they preferred to choose a local name to prevent such a confusion. By 1986, Martu Gass, or the Malagasy Hammer, was officially born. By the year of 1987, the bands were already inspired to play thrash metal genre. They participated in several venues and shows all around Antananarivo. They prefer to keep their underground metal identity until today. They did not plan to spread their music and videos in the mainstream because for them this band is just a passion, not commercial. Beside of their native language, some of the band's songs were written in multilingual, included German, Italian, or English. Even though Madagascar is a French-speaker nation, they did not attracted nor inspired to compose in French. They believe music is an identity in which you can identify a nation. Madagascar has a lot to offer in that subject. In the past, fans are very loyal and had their pulses. More often, there had been damages after every shows. By consequences, venue owners didn't want to hire metal band due to the damages metal fan causes. Meanwhile, medias at that time didn't really support rock and metal genre. The band was influenced by some foreign album cassettes they found at the local music store or exchanged between friends or through the metal community. Overkill, Motorhead, Slayer, or Creator, to name few, were among the foreign bands they were listened at that time. But mostly they were influenced by listen to the shortwave radios from the main continent of Africa or from the BBC music from England. Even though, since the beginning, the wave of extreme metal were very new and unfamiliar to the local public. The introduction was not easy. Almost everything had to be adjusted. From the way a stage were set, rehearsal studio need to be updated, the lack of access to studio recording and music instruments, the way they dressed were often controversial around the society, to name a few issues they had to face. But after all, the band members are so proud to be part of one of the first who introduced this heavy metal subgenre in the continent of Africa. (1989). As the year went by, the end of the decade was a pivotal and a turning point of the world history. By November of 1989, the demolition of the Berlin Walls begins. By December of the same year, President Gorbachev and President Bush declare the end of the Cold War. The South African apartheid was on the way to be dismantled in 1990. By 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The war between Bosnia and Herzegovina rises in 1992. All these events had some impacts and influences into the musical tendencies. Many Western rock and metal bands were at the top of their careers, while the rise of the grunge music shook some rock and metal bands. The Scandinavians and the South Americans' black metal gained some attention. Perhaps Africa were still unhealed, or perhaps still shy. Meanwhile, in the island of Madagascar, the Socialist Republic regime was crumbling, but the numbers of extreme metal bands was increasing. Not only in the capital city of Antananarivo, but they were spread into several major cities as well. The city of Antsirabe, Fianarantsoa, and Tuamasin were the first to adopt the style. Many of them were playing raw metal, but some few were already got into some kind of early technical metal due to the more access to foreign cassettes album, magazines, or VHS tape videos. By the end of the decade, Hemirah, Pharaon, Destruktor, Visitor were few names who marked this new wave of extreme metal in the island of Madagascar. Before we get back onto our extreme bands, I would like to add a piece in the puzzle. Ortho'Doxs, formed by 5 band members in Antananarivo around the year of 1988, influenced by bands like Iron Maiden, Metallica, Manowar, Slayer, or Halloween. This band was not quite considered or fall fully in the category of extreme metal band during that era, but they were the kind of a band that do them all. They used to play a variety of rock and metal styles, from heavy metal, speed metal, heavy rock, or ballad rock and metal, but they identify themselves as speed metal band, so we picked this band from that angle. The band's name has not any relation or affiliation to the religion group, even if it sounds very similar. According to the members, it's mostly translated and means brotherhoods. Their themes and lyrical messages were mostly an encouragement and call to the people to do their best in life. They choose metal genre because simply they love it. Like most bands in that era, besides societal judgments and rejections, musical instruments, recording studios, band promoters, producers were some of the big challenges they faced during that time. The band had been participated in several shows and venues around the capital city. This band was one of the bands who marked the existence of metal genre in the late 80s, 90s, all the way until these days. Unfortunately, with the lack of possibilities, they did not get the chance and the opportunity to release any album until the year of 2015. Hemirah, formed by 3 band members in Antananarivo around the year of 1988. Hemirah stood for Heavy Metal is Range Hill. Their themes and lyrical messages are mostly related to social and political injustice, oppressions, poverty, environmental, and the respect of local cultures. The band formula was a dynamic instrumental trio based on drums, bass, guitar, harmonized with the voice of a frontman. Thrash metal was their principal recipe. Like many bands existed at that time, they went through the members come and leave period. Besides their individual skills and self-techniques, they were inspired by Western bands like Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Sepultura, Destruction, Iron Maiden, Pantera, Coroner, or Obituary. They took their music very seriously. The band used to have a weekly rehearsal at their home or at a local studio for every member to be in the same page. They had been participating in several shows and venues, not only around the capital city, but in some other major cities as well. However, the rock festival that took place in Antananarivo in 1990 marked the band's golden age. As extreme metal genre was unfamiliar to the public at that time, societal judgments and pressures were pretty intense. But the band stood to their musical philosophy. This band was considered as one of the most musical, literate, extreme metal band in Madagascar at that time. Many of its band members went to musical academies. They came from jazz or classical music backgrounds. Hendrix, the guitar player who won many awards from being one of the best guitar players in the island during that era. By mid-90s, the band was disbanded due to school, works, and other life responsibilities. Like many bands at that time, they did not get the chance or the opportunities to release an album. They did have some materials recorded, but it has been misplaced or unfounded at the time I did this interview. As I mentioned previously, the subgenre didn't stay in the capital only. It spread in some major city as well. Visitor, formed by 4 band members in the city of Antsirabe, a city about 100 miles south of the capital. Thrash metal and death metal were their main recipe. A trio-based formula with a frontman vocal. They picked their name during their first show at a school venue festivity. They thought they were there just to play and disappear like visitors. But the band was invited and found some shows and venues later. By 1989, Visitor was officially born. By then, they had been participating in some venues around Antsirabe. The public did not quite understood their style of music. Ballad and soft rock were the public favorite at that time. The lack of resources and audiences were one of the major blockades of the band like them in the 80s. Media and radio stations were not interested or scared to put them on air. As early as the 90s, Dance, the band leader, had been dreaming to participate and represented the African continent to an extreme metal festival. But due to the lack of materials, funds and sponsorships, it was just stay a dream until today. The band, influenced mostly by the American band Slayer since the beginning until today. Sepultura was among their influence as well, but they were disappointed when this band split from its original members. By 1993, Visitor split. The musicians joined other bands, some formed a new one. Destruktor was one of the bands who marked that era. The band was formed by 4 band members in Antananarivo in the year of 1989. The band was mostly playing thrash and heavy metal at that time. As far as I know, some of its band members passed away some years ago. The band leader, Survivor, was planning to participate to this documentary, but things happened. Due to sudden life event, he was not able to be interviewed nor send in some documents. But to honor his band and their legacy, I am delighted to mention their existence in the history of Madagascar Extreme Metal. I borrow this Pharaon song to cover their legacy. Formed by 2 brothers with an additional band member in Antananarivo in the year of 1989. This band brought Madagascar and the African continent extreme metal scene in another level. It is not only they invented a new subgenre, the crazy metal, but they were possibly the first extreme metal band from the African continent who released an album. Evil World was recorded between 1989 and 1991. The trio chose their name in relation to the Christian belief considered the pharaohs were bad kings. But the band thinks pharaohs were genius, ahead of their time, and mysterious leaders. Frustrated by human society issues, the world problems, the dysfunctional of government, church abuses, and some institutions, they decide to take stage and play. Despite of their inability to play instrument, they learn their music on the go. They felt they did not have a time to waste because they thought they were in a mission. They did not consider themselves as an entertainer nor a show band. They chose extreme metal because metal was loud, fast, bizarre, even creepy. Contrary to their metal peers, the band did not have any interest using the theme of love, fantasy, or biblical verses. Instead, they went straight and criticized the societal issues, local and global problems. Inspired by bands like early Sarcophago, early Sepultura, but their lyrics were inspired by punk and reggae lyrics, more rebellious output. They had fewer shows due to their underground musical style. Their music company rejected 6 out of 12 of their songs due to their strong lyrical nature. In 1991, the band split, but another album was recorded between 1992 and 1993, but still not released until this day. Behind all great things, there were always people behind the scene who worked hard to make things happen, either from the studios, the medias, or sometimes from the government. Few names most of this band kept mentioning during their interviews were Ramassinuni Hersua Bayar, or short by Bayar. He was a rehearsal studio owner in Antananarivo during that era, a musician himself. He was one of the only who stand and hosting extreme metal band during that time. He was always very supportive when extreme metal band rented his instrument for shows. The Malagasy rock and metal communities in Antananarivo considered him as the father of rock and metal of Madagascar. Thank you for all you have done. Rock in peace, Bayar. Silavna Ralaindimbi, known as Tsitsi, a well-known journalist, filmmaker, and a governmental minister who supported many bands at that time. Appreciation for all you have done. Rest in peace. Randria Numiarisua Dieudonné, known as Randy Donny, a journalist who was always by the sides of the Malagasy rock and metal communities. He had been covered several articles and interviewed many rock and metal bands, either on newspapers, on air, or on TV. Someone who witnesses the evolution of metal in Madagascar from its beginning. Thank you for your amazing works. Jason Flower, a Canadian record label owner, music archivist, one of the first label who was interested and produced an 80s extreme metal band from the continent of Africa. Thank you for your great and bright initiatives.
My name is Jason Flower and I run the archival record label Supreme Echo here in Victoria, BC, Canada. I've always had an interest in underground from obscure corners of the world and was well aware of there being a history of punk rock in continental Africa, but had known very little about extreme metal during the 1980s. There was a compilation called Last Call for the Lost Scenes, which was put out by Luke Haas from Tiananmen 89 Records, which featured one song by the Malagasy group Kazar. This led me to be curious about what else had happened there, if there had in fact been an entire scene. That led me to eventually tracking down the Pharaons.
These are only few names among the hundreds who were pivotal pieces during the first era of extreme metal in the Red Island. As the decade was folding, the extreme metal scene in Madagascar was loaded. Many of the 80s bands made it to the 90s. Meanwhile, new bands joined the rank. Martz was one of several bands who marked the 90s decade. We will be discovering these bands in the next episode. Until then, be well and thank you for watching Mad Metal Evolution.